Man, that was one intense intro I'm working on it right now, but I know it's going to be intense. Anyway, let's get to the nuts and bolts of things. With this $300 project, it's going to be three words that are the most important. Are you ready? I didn't hear you. Anyway, three words are deals, deals, and deals. And I got another three words: used, open box, or refurbished. Not necessarily in that order. And I got another three words for you: Craigslist, Facebook Marketplace, and Newegg. And eBay. So that's four words. Just never mind that I said three words to begin with. Anyway, that's where you're going to get your deals, deals, deals. Now, with that in mind, if you want to build a $300 PC that's going to have any competence, you're going to have to make some concessions. That's going to be used parts, like I said before, and you're going to have to spend a little bit more time seeking out these parts. But if you do it efficiently and effectively, you will not be spending too much time doing this. I spend more than I should, but probably about every 2 or 3 days, about 10 minutes or so, looking for parts when I'm in the middle of trying to build something. That's another thing. It's kind of pointless to look for deals unless you're ready to build, because good deals, unless it's something new on a website, a used thing or open box or refurbished stuff, even, good deals don't last very long. So you're kind of wasting your time to look for anything until you're ready to make your move. You're ready to build your project. And when you do, you got to look ideally every day on Facebook, Craigslist, and eBay for about at least 5 minutes a day, 5-10 minutes, because good deals only last 1, 2, 3 days, unless it's on eBay where it's an auction, or it might be a low buy it now. A low buy it now you get lucky on. Thank you. Anyway, with that said, that is the main method of making a $300 PC. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of it, because if you do this, $300 PC is actually effectively. So now I'll go over what I've done with this PC and my recommendations for when you go seeking your parts out online or in person. So here we go. First off, I have the Landboy case, which I got on Craigslist for an astonishingly impossible $20. Now, admittedly, this is a challenge to do, and this is a nice case, as you can see. But this is possible. But should you not be able to find a nice case like this, you could concede and get something a little bit, how should I say, not as nice, as the case is generally the least most functional part of a PC. But I was trying to build a well-balanced PC here when it comes to performance and aesthetics, and I got I got very lucky with this case. But this is not impossible if you have a little bit of perseverance. And I'm going to drop my recommendations for video cards, since I'm looking at it, in the $80 to $90 or $80 to $100 range, for which will rock 1080p right now. Okay, now let's talk about this list for a minute. They're in order of decent in performance. So top of the list is your better performers. At the bottom of the list is your least performing cards. Now, with that said, this whole list is kind of like my cheat sheet that I've had in my head. All these cards are competent at 1080p. So the real questions you have to figure out is what these are two questions you really should ask. What games you're going to play, and what amount of power are you willing to use to power your graphics card? Are you going to use a 300 watt power supply, or 500 watt, 600 watt? So for the first question, if you're going to be playing games like GTA, Tomb Raider, you definitely won't be at the top of the list. But other games that are much easier to play would be like Call of Duty or Dota, so it'd be towards the bottom of the list. And for question number 2,
you would have to go through here and figure out what card uses what amount of power. I got a general idea. I think the least power draw of all these is the 1050 Ti. Should be 75 watts and require no extra wires. There is not a 6-pin connector going to it or anything. It's just straight drawing straight out of the motherboard. And I think the 2070 might be the same way, but I'm not sure. And the highest draw of all these is probably either the 580 or the 980. And the happy medium of this would be your best performance to power, so performance per watt would actually be on this list would be the 1066 gig or the 1063 gig. So with the once you figure out what graphics card you're going to be aiming for, this is kind of the core of the gaming PC. You can move on to the next thing, which is going to be probably your power supply. Unless you're working with your power supply first, kind of a lot depends on what you already have. If you don't have anything, start with the graphics card, then go with your power supply, I say. And you can figure that out, and not to go over that at all. So, with that said, we're going to move on to the processor and motherboard. I use an older AMD 6-core processor that I already had on an AMD 3 Plus motherboard. This processor will still rock 1080p at 60 frames, no problem. However, you can buy new parts at the same price as you can get this online, actually. So this is not what I recommend. I'm going to tell you what I'm recommending now, and it is by far the best deal, that bar none, and there's no other recommendation on processor. So here it is. The Ryzen 3 1200 4-core processor is by far the best processor you can get for $60, and might even be for less than $100. If you want to get a $100 processor, I recommend the 1700. But that's going to be hard to do on a $300 PC unless you get the cheaper video card. Well, the 1700 is an 8-core processor. But odds are you're going to use this. This has very cheap. You can buy it brand new with the cooler from Newegg still. Uses virtually no power, 65 watts. You can overclock the crap out of it, which will use more power, but it's besides the point. And this is going to be a great gaming processor. It would be good, probably well over 90 frames on most games at 1080p, so you'd be good for VR. The main difference between this and the one I got in this PC is mine would not be good for VR because it's just not going to keep up to 90 frames. That's virtually the main difference. And overall, my older 6-core is probably about 60% the power of this, maybe 70% overall. But anyway, this has a very strong single-threaded performance, is what you want in games. And without going in further depth, this is definitely the best choice for a $300 PC. Now that you got your PC, you're going to need a motherboard, and the processor you chose was an AM4 processor, which is AMD's current socket. Good news for you, you can get a good motherboard for cheap, and I officially recommend the 350M by Gigabyte that you can usually get for dirt cheap. And even better news, it supports the latest AM4 processors. So down the road, you can upgrade to AMD's a beast of a processor, the 16-core 32-thread processor that's I believe is not out yet or is coming out. No worries, it's on the official CPU list page. So that is an awesome setup. I kind of call it a stepping stone setup. Now let's move on to storage. On this computer I have a Western Digital Blue drive, 1 terabyte. Got it for $30. It's probably a couple years old, no problem with it. It's pretty quick for a hard drive. if you're not going to have a plethora of games, just stick with a 256 gig SSD and get those brand new for $30. Or if you can manage it in the budget, you get a slightly bigger SSD, or stay with the small SSD and get the bigger hard drive to stack on top of it. You just have to have the ability, the computer ability to manage that a little bit better. So that's my recommendation for storages. So for $30, that's all it takes to get the storage you need. Moving on, next I'm going to go to RAM. For 99% of games, 8 gigs is still plenty. If that's all you're going to do is game, if you're not going to be doing a multitask, going to have a million things going on in the background, 8 to 12 gigs. You can get 8 gigs of DDR3 for around $20-$30. You can get 8 gigs of DDR4 if you do the AM4 setup like I said, for probably about the same amount, maybe 40. If you really want to go the extra mile, you can usually get 16 gigs of DDR4. Memory speed is not critical, so you can get 16 gigs of DDR4 for probably $50. Actually, I already have gotten it for $50, no problem. Okay, let's get boring stuff out of the way. What accessories do you need? Do you need a memory card reader, Wi-Fi card, or a DVD player? Because all those things are about $20 each. I got a brand new DVD player for $20 on this, $19. Wi-Fi card for $15. I got my main one that I love. I'll make a picture of it right now. And also, you usually get a memory card reader for around $10 brand new. So that's not a lot of money. And finally, for the little bit of flash I have in this case to make it makes it pop, everything I have on here is very cheap. I got 2 standard generic LED fans, one for the exhaust, one for the cooler. That came with the case, but even if you bought them, it'd be about $5. And I have a $20 set of RGB heat spreaders that I got on eBay. Picture here. Those are easy to set up, and they have no external controller, and they look nice. They don't really do much without the controller, unfortunately. So if you had RGB controller, an external controller, or something through your motherboard, they'd look even better. My last video was a short review on those heat spreaders if you want to check them out. And then finally, the front fans aren't they fancy dancy? Believe it or not, those are just $7 generic RGB fans that I bought. There is no external controller on those. There is no software through the motherboard or anything. I bought those, took a chance on them, thinking that there might be an internal controller, even though it didn't specify that they had one. And I'll be damned, I plug the things in and there they go. They go through their routine, so clearly there is an internal controller on these 2 fans. And they're pretty cool. So they're only $7 a pop, and I mean, I couldn't be more happy with them. And it's great for an entry-level PC where most people are not going to want to be messing with RGB software, or even not having to deal with an external controller, possibly just plug them in and go. So that is how that goes. So let's break down the money aspect of this, the budget of the build, what you can expect to pay, and that way you have can figure out where you want to go with your build. Well, starting at the top, let's talk about what I would consider invariables, unless you have a better idea. The computer pretty much locked down at 65. That's the best you're going to do, unless you have some other deal you're going to find. The motherboard's locked down to 50, more or less. Those are your hard. Those need to be your hard. All these really need to be. Doesn't really matter if you get deter from this. But these need to be your hard limits, I consider, for a well-balanced 1080p ripping PC. Storage, $30, which is your hard drive or SSD. And your power supply, you can get a good name brand power supply used, if you look hard enough, for around $35. Done it many times. And I took the average, or the middle price, which for the graphics card. So I didn't take the high or low, I took the middle, and that came out to $87.50. Anyway, that comes out the grand total of $327.50. So that leaves almost $25 in the budget to either get a better graphics card, better power supply, better case, better storage, better memory, better motherboard, or even bump up to the 1700 CPU. So there's a lot of discretion there. So there is room in the budget for flexibility, or you want a little bit of other stuff, accessories like fans or DVD players. However, there is not much, but either way, you can have something that's basically good to go. You can add to it in the future for easily, well, I shouldn't say easily, but without a whole extreme amount of effort for less than $350. And that's kind of it, I guess, on the money side of things. Except for one thing I forgot to say. When it comes to your case, try to find a case, I know it's hard to do, that has extras, like a power supply, like fans, like a DVD player, whatever. That way you can use that stuff, and that'll save you a lot of money on your budget for sure, and you'll be able to bump up a couple things that you didn't think you would be able to, or get a couple other things that you didn't think you'd be able to, whatever. So definitely keep an eye out on cases that have extras in them. So I hope this is of great help, and I hope you do make a computer if you're interested, and I hope it performs like a badass, and that you're totally happy with the end product. And you, lights just went out. What the hell? I gotta go. Bye.